This is Citigroup's observations. So when they looked at the overall thing, they said, okay, well, the action scenario costs less than the inaction scenario. So that means that we should probably do the action. The action scenario also avoids potentially enormous liabilities. So that would say we should do the action. Cleaner air has to be better than pollution. So why would you not take action? And that was their conclusion. So what Citigroup is doing is they're suggesting that we do put a price on carbon, and I'll be speaking more about that later when I'm discussing the political actions we can take. So now we're going to turn to the personal action. And one of the things that the report highlighted is that we need to go towards efficiency. And what that means to me is it's a way to get our needs met, but to use less resources. And if we can do that, then that results in a safer climate, and also it allows other people to get their needs met. So one of the ways that we sort of consume the most directly is by eating 3 times a day. And so I'm going to talk a bit about the efficiency of a plant-based diet versus an omnivore or meat diet. 1.5 acres of land can produce 37,000 pounds of plant-based food, or that same 1.5 acres can produce 375 pounds of meat. The Soy National Laboratory in the United States estimated that for a given piece of land, you can grow 15 times more protein if you plant soy as opposed to growing animals. Okay, the next slide shows just the amount of food per day that's eaten by the 7 billion people on the planet, because people eat about 3 pounds of food a day. Cows, and there's 1.5 billion of them, they eat 90 pounds of food per day. So you can see a lot more of the food of the world is going to the cows than to the people. That's not quite a good comparison because cows eat grass and people can't eat grass. But I'd like to point out that 82% of the starving people live in countries where the grain is fed to livestock, and then that meat is consumed by people in the Western world. 50% of grains worldwide are fed to livestock, and 800 million people, or about 1 in every 9, are malnourished. This slide shows that the meat and dairy industry combined use nearly 1/3 of all the fresh water in the world today. So people are saying that maybe our future wars are going to be over water, not oil. There was a drought in Syria that has been linked to climate change that caused a lot of displacement of people. So a lot of rural people in Syria could no longer stay on the land and grow and farm, so then they moved to the cities. It seemed like a good time to maybe try to get rid of the dictator. So the civil war broke out, a lot of suffering, a lot of refugees there. The next slide just talks about that animal agriculture is responsible for 91% of the Amazon destruction. So right now, about 1 to 2 acres of rainforest is cleared every second. The leading driver of that is clearing the land to either grow soy to feed to animals or to do cattle ranching. We're in the midst right now of the 6th great extinction, and we're losing 100 species per day, and that's mainly due to habitat loss. If we ate less meat, then there'd be less need to cut down the rainforest. And the rainforest is also good because it stores CO2 and produces oxygen. The next slide shows about dead zones. So a dead zone is where water doesn't have enough oxygen to support life, and it's due to fertilizers and animal waste runoff. So a more vegan diet would obviously mean less fertilizers are used because there'd only be a fraction of the land needed to grow food, and then there'd also be less animal waste. One farm that has 2,500 dairy cows produces the same amount of waste as a city of 440,000 people. So there's a lot of waste from just one farm. So reasons to eat less meat and dairy. A suggested goal for you is 1/4 of what we consume now. So I just want to talk a little bit about that. In North America, on average, we eat 4.2 pounds of meat per person per week, but the world average is 1.8 pounds per person per week. So automatically, I think we shouldn't be more than the world average. We should be less than the world average because the world average right now is not sustainable, and there's going to be a lot more people wanting to eat meat as they get more money with jobs and so forth. So I think the goal should be about 1 pound per person per week, or less if you can. And here's some reasons why. There'd be less animal suffering. And it's good if you're going to try a new habit to have a lot of reasons why you want to do that, so then you can either pick your favorite or be inspired to do that. Less human suffering. And it's good for rainforests and other habitats. There'd be less heart disease and obesity. Avoid the ocean dead zones. Antibiotic use would be curtailed, and that would preserve its efficacy. So right now there's so many antibiotics being used that they don't work as well as they used to. And 80% of our antibiotics go to animals. So if we had less need for those antibiotics being used for animals, that would help us in that front. It would make you feel more energetic, helps you discover new foods, and I think it's also an effective way to live in solidarity with others, so that you are being kind to the animals and to other people. Okay, now I'm going to move on to political action and talk to you about carbon fee and dividend. Carbon fee and dividend is a way to price carbon where the fee is put on at the source, and then all the money that's collected is given back to the people in equal shares. So what it really does is it's like a transfer of wealth from people that use carbon to people that don't. And it'll really encourage people to use less carbon than they do today. And if this price is steadily rising, it'll give a strong signal to investors that this is the way we're headed. We're really serious about moving to a low carbon economy, and it'll spur innovation. So I'm a leader in Waterloo of Citizens Climate Lobby, and Citizens Climate Lobby works for effective climate legislation, and it enables people to have breakthroughs in the exercise of their personal power. And we persuade people by ideas, by building relationships, and we use Gandhian principles. So I'm really happy to be and proud to be a member of Citizens Climate Lobby. It's a growing organization. We have 308 active chapters. It got started in the United States, but since it's spread to Canada and other countries around the world: Australia, Bangladesh, Brazil, Switzerland, England, Spain, France, Germany, India, Nepal, New Zealand, Panama, Portugal, Scotland, Serbia, and Sweden. So we're really excited to have like an international front. And the reason it's so important to get the legislation passed in the United States is that there's such a big driver in the global economy that the world will really pay attention. I've got a little video to show you what carbon fee and dividend does. Before we show that, I want to just tell you about what the Citizens Climate Lobbies accomplished last year. We had 1,086 lobby meetings, 1,670 articles of published media, 1,041 outreach events, and 6,991 handwritten letters to Congress. So we are building that political will for effective climate legislation.
The climate is changing. Extreme weather is disrupting livelihoods and food supplies around the world. This is observed. This is documented. This is the scientific community's consensus. The climate is changing. Carbon emissions are driving that change. Emissions come from burning fossil fuels. So if we want to slow or even reverse the change, we must lower our fossil fuel use. By charging a fee on fossil fuels and returning that revenue to households as a dividend, we can do just that, starting a chain of positive effects. Fossil fuels become less desirable. Cleaner sources of energy become more competitive. The dividend creates millions of jobs. Carbon emissions go down, reduced air pollution saves tens of thousands of lives, and climate change is brought under control. We can make this happen, but enacting a carbon fee and dividend isn't in our hands, it's in theirs. How do we sway them? What can we do? We can use our voices to express political will and demand action. We must help our elected leaders work together. It's on us to tell them what we want as a group. Because when voices call out together, their impact multiplies. Government can respond to the will of the people, provided we tell the government what we want. And what we want is a livable world. This is what Citizens Climate Lobby works for: to empower citizens to connect with and influence their members of Congress, to spread the idea that each one of us can address climate change. Bring your voice to citizensclimatelobby.org.
Okay, so that's a summary of carbon fee and dividend. Thank you very much for listening.